have an amazing keynote here on the stage. And immediately after this keynote, we are going to be announcing the results. Dear members of the jury, I truly do appreciate your time being here, listening to all these presentations and putting your evaluations. My only request now, that will be the last boundary I'm going to be pushing with you, is to calculate the points of the startups that you put and to finalize the final valuation within the keynote of our next speaker, if possible. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Now it's time to announce the final keynote here at the stage of EEMEA 2015 in Istanbul. He joined a company 3 years ago, which already was unicorn, but who could have said that it will be much more in valuation, higher valuation than Deutsche Bank, and now even higher than that. This company is called Uber, and Jambu is the regional general manager for EEMEA at the company. Jambu Palaniappan, please, I know that I never say your name right. Jambu, please, welcome on stage.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks for having me.
Very much welcome here, and this is your clicker.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thanks all for sticking around and taking the time. It's always good to be back in Istanbul. I think it's a city that shows a lot of potential in terms of growth and a lot of the urban trends that we see globally. And those trends are interesting because I think they really shape the world that we live in today. Urbanization, people moving from rural areas to cities, changes in employment and employment schemes. So what I thought I'd do today is tell you a bit about Uber, who we are, where we come from, and a bit about how we think about the future. We are really fortunate to live, in a world where instant gratification, the on-demand economy is evolving, and that's really what shaped our mission. It's really a simple one. It's on your mobile phone, push a button, and get a ride, a car in a matter of minutes in over 350 cities around the world. For those of you not familiar with how it works, Uber is mobile only. So on your mobile phone, download an app, basic sign-up information, and the requests flow that you see here is fairly simple. A car comes to you in a matter of minutes. You can see in that middle screen photo, name, and identity information of the driver. And at the end of your trip, fare is calculated automatically, deducted from your electronic payment system, credit or debit cards. We use systems like Alipay in China and Airtel Money in India. And then you're able to rate your drivers. So this rating system is something that's been discussed a lot. It's actually a two-way rating system. So customers rate drivers, and drivers actually rate customers. And what that does is it leads to a higher level of accountability for both sides of the platform and network. So Uber started in San Francisco, and this was our footprint in 2010. And you can see it's one city, one place. And what we learned was focus in expansion was particularly important. This business, because it built a digital mesh or map over the physical footprint of a city, was actually really critical to make sure that we knew exactly how that city worked. And one of the phrases we use internally at Uber is that we like to celebrate cities. And so we have on the ground in each of the cities that we operate in a team. And that team is from the city, responsible for building the business in the market. And I think really is a critical component to our deep sort of customer empathy and focus. Now, expansion has been a big part of our business, both expansion in product, which I'll talk about, but also in footprint. And so you can see this map of where we are today. And what we've seen, and perhaps this is the most interesting thing, is despite all of the talk about Silicon Valley and fast-growing businesses in the US, our businesses outside of the US have actually grown comparatively faster. And so we've seen incredibly fast-growing businesses in places like Latin America, India, China, and we've built, in many markets where alternatives have not existed, more efficient public transport networks than have existed before. So in a city like Johannesburg, where there was never really public options for consumers, Uber now, on average, arrives to customers in less than 4 minutes at a price that is 20 to 40% cheaper than anything in the market. So that footprint is here, and what's remarkable is how similar the customer, and when I say customer, I mean both for riders and drivers, experience is in each of those cities and each of those countries. Turkey has been a really, really interesting and compelling opportunity for us. It's clear, if you spend time in Istanbul and you spend time in Turkey, that creating alternatives and building transport networks that are built on efficiency, liquidity, and increasing access across not just Istanbul, but across the country is really critical. This is a map of people in Istanbul who have signed up and used an open Uber, and you can see that is only expanding as time goes on. So when we started, that was a much narrower footprint. Since we launched, we've really focused on a product that when I first heard about it, I actually kind of laughed. It's a product called Uber XL, and what it is it's a passenger van, somewhere between 8 and 10 people can be accommodated in it, and it's incredibly comfortable. It's accessible right now. You can get one about 5 to 6 minutes on average in this part of the city, and what it allows you to do is creates an incredibly comfortable experience. And maybe what's most compelling about it, particularly in cities where people like to move around in large groups, is it's made the economics of using these kinds of cars really efficient. So that's for drivers who can do more trips, be busier, and earn more income, and also for riders who, when they're traveling in a large group, can use a feature we have called Fare Split, which actually allows you to share the cost of your Uber trip directly in the app across multiple people. We've also launched Uber Boat product, self-explanatory, but you can take a boat and save yourself some time in traffic. I've used this a few times, and it's certainly incredibly convenient. And we work with taxis as well. And it's maybe one of the misconceptions about our business that we're not about choice. And I think in any city, taxis are a critical part of the transport infrastructure. And in certain cities, we choose to work with them. And the response from the taxi community here has been very positive in joining and working with Uber Taxi. We've also launched views where accessibility is a really critical component of our business. So people with historically challenges in transportation are now able to use Uber and get around.
I've been living in Istanbul for 4 years now, and of course I travel a lot from Istanbul to other cities, San Francisco, Dublin, London, wherever it may be. So whenever I go on a business trip, one of the first things I do is to get a SIM card and pull up the Uber app. So I was just in Dublin for a conference, and of course I had no idea how to get from the airport to the conference center. And I called myself an Uber cab. The cab driver pulled up in a silver Mercedes S-Class, super nice guy, took me around the city and gave me an awesome tour. And in Istanbul, as you know, there are a lot of traffic. It's really hard to get from point A to point B. And owning a car has its own difficulties. So instead of owning a car, I rely on Uber to get to and from work, to get to conferences, dinners, on a night out, wherever it may be. I have Uber there to help me out.
So it's a really interesting idea that he raised, which is at some point, when you factor in how much it costs to buy a car, pay for fuel, maintenance, insurance, parking, there's actually a trade-off conversation that we all go through in our minds of what alternatives would actually be cheaper and arguably more convenient. And what we're seeing in cities where we've achieved scale is people actually selling their cars because of the alternatives that exist in the market, Uber being a large component of that. We're starting to experiment, though, beyond just transportation, which is our core, into what we call Uber Everything. Uber Rush, which is a courier service in New York City, and is now expanding outside of that jurisdiction. We've launched it out in San Francisco and Chicago, and it allows basically merchants to use the Uber platform to deliver products to their customers. So this is local restaurants, shops, retailers who may need a on-ground, last-mile delivery mechanism can use Uber. And also Uber Eats, which is a food delivery service that's now active in over a dozen cities as well. Our technology is who we are. We're technologists at our core. And leveraging the power of a growing developer network has become a critical component or growth lever. And so we've got an API integration plan that we've rolled out. You see examples from Google Maps, from many different restaurant and food apps, from airline companies that have basically integrated transport to part of their customer experience. I get asked a lot about vision and future. What's next for Uber? Where are we headed? And there's something I'll tell you about, which is called Uber Pool. And really what it is it's the next step function change from a technology perspective that we are excited about. Uber Pool is really a simple idea. It's rather than every person in this room leaving and taking their own car home, what if we could aggregate the demand of customers and digitally match them to share their cars? And so instead of one car for one person, what if it was one car for 4 people? And this is how an Uber Pool trip works. The first passenger is picked up, but before they are dropped off, a second passenger who is headed in the same direction is actually picked up. And we've built algorithms that make sure that that pickup process and time is very limited. And that means that the drivers are always busy. They're always occupied. More efficiency means more earnings potential for drivers, and it means lower prices for consumers. We're really excited about what future potential this could hold. One of the questions that I get a lot is people that meet in the cars. And we actually had, I think, last month, our first wedding that was from 2 people who met in an Uber Pool. So if you're looking, this could be an option for you. And I think this probably resonates, right? I've certainly spent my fair share of time in Istanbul traffic. For me, these are the kinds of technology functions that, along with really smart regulation and government partnerships, we think can change structurally how cities like Istanbul deal with traffic, congestion, and the growth that inevitably comes from more cars on the road. What it means is sharing cars, and those shared cars result in fewer empty seats, less duplication, and less congestion. It means a much smaller environmental impact and reduced CO2 emissions, and lower prices mean access to affordable transit for people in rural or underserved areas where current existing infrastructure doesn't reach. In Los Angeles, where we've done 5 million Uber Pool trips over the last 8 months, we've saved over 500,000 liters of petrol, saved over 12 million driving kilometers, and over 1,400 metric tons of CO2 emissions. So that's really substantive value that purely technology-driven solution can generate. It leaves me, I think, very ambitious and bullish about how technology can really impact the cities we live in and the way we live our lives. There's a lot of runway left, and really looking forward to bringing some of these products and innovations to Turkey sometime soon. Thanks so much for having me.